I waive my anonymity over a sexual abuse that happened to me when I was a teenager, and I really want to make sure that other people don't go through this. So if you get into power and as a Labour MP, are you going to put PSHE as statutory in schools?
Yes, we would. I think it is right to have sex and relationship education for primary and secondary schools. It's got to be age appropriate. It's not simply important for the reasons that people often think about this, because it's about teenage pregnancy and the like. You know, I think we've got a massive challenge, a challenge that your readers talk about, I think, which is the way men and women are viewed in our society. And PSHE is actually one of the best means in terms of school of, actually young people knowing that men and women are equal and to see men and women in the right light, if you like. So I think PSHE is incredibly important. I really regret that the government is not responding on this. We've now had the all-party select committee, so that's, for people from across the political spectrum, not just one party, saying that that's the right way to go.
We actually haven't released our manifesto yet, but we have had some policies up online for a while. But what we plan to do is introduce sex education at age 11, partly because we also think it's up to the family. So I took very much the view, when I was bringing up my own daughter, that I would not lie to her about anything. But if she asked those difficult questions, I would talk to her about them, but in a way that I felt was age appropriate to her. I think actually PHSE has got to a point now, particularly with younger children, where some of the issues that they're covering and some of the issues that kids are being told about and that are talked about in the classroom, if you were approached by somebody in the street and asked about them, you'd probably quite rightly be arrested. So there's a fine line, I think, between giving young girls the information that they need in order to be able to make decisions and to later in life develop healthy relationships, but there's also a line in terms of not scaring.
Well, the Green Party not only intends to make PSHE a statutory part in all state schools. Caroline Lucas, the Green MP, is already working on this. She has a bill now before Parliament and has been winning quite a lot of support for that, and very encouraging. And I'm hoping we might even manage to see that in the term of this Parliament led by the Green Party. Children feel like they're being pushed through exam after exam. There's the focus on these academic subjects, but we're really not preparing pupils for life, not giving them sex and relationship education in particular. And I know when I go around and talk to schools and colleges and universities, people really react to that and say, we just haven't got the information we need. But also things like personal finance, first aid, nutrition, food. There's a whole range of preparation for life that we're simply not giving our pupils. And PSHE really covers a lot of that territory. And also, in a related area, I'm very concerned about democracy education, making sure people have a chance to learn about voting, democracy, government, how it all works at school.
Now, Nick, do you intend to make PSHE a statutory part of the national curriculum in all state-funded schools?
Yes, in a nutshell. And then it's not at the moment, because I couldn't persuade my Conservative colleagues in government to do so. So at the moment you've got sex and relationship education, which is compulsory on all maintained schools, but interestingly enough not in academies and free schools, which I think is ridiculous. Why should little boys and girls be taught sex and relationship education under guidance which I think was last revised back in 2000.
Can I ask you why you think it's so important?
Because everything from teenage pregnancy to people respecting other individuals to boys and girls as they grow into men and women treating each other with dignity, tackling domestic or the origins of domestic violence, sexual health, the communication of sexually transmitted diseases, all of these things. I think what is just, again, just a fact that a set of guidelines, whatever they call them, the way in which sex and relationship education is taught, the guidance hasn't been fully updated, particularly in the years since the internet and the digital age consumed the world in which our young people now inhabit.
The whole thing about the Conservative Party and our education policies, we trust heads and teachers to make the right decisions for their school and their pupils. And actually, as I say, when I go around to primary schools, a lot of them will start some form of relationships education at the upper end of primary. As Conservatives, we believe that actually just because you make something statutory, that ends up with some sort of tick box attitude. And actually, I'd much rather that schools had really good teaching materials, they made the right decision. This is what our children of this age absolutely need in this part of the country, because there will be differences. If we just have one curriculum, one size fits all, I don't think actually that's going to inspire young people about the curriculum for life that I want to see. We will absolutely make it clear to schools and to heads and to teachers that this should be an important part of the curriculum, but we aren't going to put it on a statutory basis.
What age do you think sex relationship education should begin?
I think sex and relationship education should begin basically as soon as schooling begins, obviously in an age-appropriate way. And so it's important that you've got a framework, particularly around issues like respecting each other, understanding that if you're in a situation you feel uncomfortable, you should tell someone else that this situation is making you uncomfortable. Give children the tools to both keep themselves safe and have good relationships and interactions with other people.
It's not actually what I think, it's actually what the experts think is age appropriate. That's the whole point of having guidance. The whole point about having guidance in our education system is that you don't have the whims and wishes or individual prejudices or instincts of politicians determining what a teacher teaches you. And there's a very established way of doing this. We do this in every other subject area. You say to a panel of experts and educationalists, look, we want to make it as a matter of public policy, a requirement that these things are taught in our classrooms. It needs to be done in an age-appropriate way. Now, please draw up guidance, much as we draw up guidance about which kings and queens of England should be taught at which stage in history classes.
There are plans, I know, and sometimes it's taught in primary school. We actually think that's too young. Sex education covers a huge amount of perhaps quite distressing subjects for a small child. So we would think that 11 would be a more appropriate.
Why 11?
As I say, I've had a child myself. I know how easily upset children can be. And I don't think there's any need to talk about the details of things like domestic violence, about rape, about serious sexual abuse before a child absolutely needs to hear that.
I don't think there is an age. I don't think you should say it's going to start, because actually I think the relationship education probably starts, and I think a lot of the focus should be on relationships. So things like consent and abuse, it's very important that they are talked about in an age-appropriate way, but they will start quite early. I think about primary schools in my constituency and some of the conversations that the teachers will have with the kids there about broken homes, about sibling relationships, about the involvement of social services, for example. And those sorts of conversations start very, very early. Official teaching, I think again when I go to schools, it tends to be the upper end of primary and then obviously into secondary schools.
Look, I think about this as a dad, and if I think about my 5-year-old who's at school now, there's some things I don't want him learning about at the age of 5, fairly obviously. But then, later in primary school, into secondary school, that's when you can learn about those things. But there are things you should be learning about, like friendship and what friendship means, and sort of what a kind of relationship and a good relationship means with your friends and others. So I think there's ways that can be done. I don't think parents should need to fear this. I actually think most parents want this. And if I'm frank, it goes to what education's about. Education for me is about passing exams, of course it is, but it's also about preparing young people for life. And that's everything from mental health to the kind of society we live in to all of the challenges.
So you seem very pro PSHE being taught in schools, so do you think this is something that parents should teach, or something in schools where it's part of, say, science and maths and the curriculum by teachers?
It should be taught in school. Head teachers should regard it as a mainstream, uncontroversial, and required thing for them to do. Do I think generally teaching is best done when it is reinforced by what parents say at home? Yes, of course it is, and that's why I think the best schools, much more now than, say I rather pompously in my day when I was at school, when you had sort of family and school and the two planets never met. My experience is that the best schools now, again driven by the evidence of what works, reach out to parents and try and tell parents what they're teaching kids. Make sure, obviously, in this area, because it is a contested area and it is controversial for some people, that parents are comfortable with what's being taught. Because some of the truly ludicrous scare stories. Not a month goes by without the Daily Mail claiming that 5-year-olds are going to be asked to, use condoms. It's just bonkers. Of course, that's not what is going to happen. Age-appropriate sex and relationship education has been done for ages, can be done well, and is best done, frankly, without that kind of meaningless, senseless scaremongering, but also best done in partnership with parents, because if parents know what's being taught to their children and help that along, they get a better education.
Yeah, it's absolutely both. And probably in a better way than I was taught it at school, where it was purely about the nuts and bolts and about sex and how you did it and the sort of mechanics of fertilisation and all that sort of thing. I think it is important to do that within a context of healthy relationships.
I think PSHE absolutely has to be part of the core curriculum and ensures every child gets to know what they need. Children need to understand about their bodies, they need to understand about relating to other people, and that needs to start, I think, at a very early age appropriately, obviously, but it's really important that children have a chance to explore the issues and always be ahead of what they need to know in terms of their physical development and in terms of their social development, so they don't walk into situations and just think, I've never thought about this, I don't know what I would do in this situation, and have to make a snap second decision about what to do. You really need as much information, support, knowledge and background so that you can make good decisions for yourself.
In primary school, you have one class teacher, so it's going to have to be the class teacher, it seems to me. But they've got to be trained, and they've got to be trained about how to do it. And maybe there'll be other services, other people who can come in and do it as well. In secondary school, there are already specific teachers who teach some of these things in some schools, and they find ways of doing that. But I think obviously the teachers have to be well trained. You can't have teachers who don't have the training about how to do it and what's the appropriate ages for it. And we obviously have to look at the curriculum to make sure it's up to date and it's appropriate for the times and takes account of things like peer pressure on the internet.
Don't you think there should be some guidance from you instead of relying on head teachers and teachers and maybe a specialist coming in and teaching it? Because my mum is a teaching assistant, and the amount they have to do and the amount of subjects, they have to teach everything, maths, science, PE. Don't you think there should be those specialist teachers coming in?
Well, I do absolutely think there should be specialists, and again that's why we're working with the PSHE Association and others to make sure that there's really good teaching materials and other people coming in. So for example, I wouldn't say, let's say it's secondary school, I'm going to go to an assembly in one of my secondaries in the next couple of weeks, and there's going to be a lady coming in talking about forced marriage. And I think that's a conversation that is much better coming from somebody who potentially has been a victim of forced marriage, much more powerful that she gives the assembly. I've seen the assembly she gives, rather than, as you say, teachers aren't going to be able to teach about particular specialist subjects. And so that's why I think giving schools and heads and teachers that sort of a kit, if you like, of lesson plans, really good ways of introducing subjects, really good people to invite in and speak, is much more powerful than just having some sort of tick box exercise that's sort of tacked on at the end of the day.